Victoria Marshall's scream shattered the ICU's sterile silence at 2:47 a.m. Her daughter's body convulsed violently, monitors shrieking as 9 specialists stood frozen, helpless. In that moment, every dollar of her $3 billion fortune meant nothing. Then, a black man in a janitor's uniform dropped his mop and sprinted toward the room. "Get away from her!" a doctor shouted. But James Carter didn't stop. What he did next would expose a conspiracy that nearly destroyed them both and prove that sometimes the person who saves your life is the one you'd never think to see. Drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. The first time Victoria Marshall's world cracked open, she was sitting in a leather chair worth more than most people's cars staring at her daughter through hospital glass. "Mrs. Marshall?" Dr. Raymond Chen stood beside her, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "We've run every test, consulted with specialists from Johns Hopkins Mayo Clinic, Cleveland. The inflammation markers don't match any known disease. The seizures don't respond to medication. Her cognitive decline is accelerating in ways we've never seen." Victoria didn't move. Couldn't move. Beyond the glass, 9-year-old Sophia lay motionless except for the steady rise and fall of the ventilator breathing for her. 6 months ago, her daughter had been captain of the chess team, reading at a 12th grade level, arguing passionately about climate change over dinner. Now she couldn't remember her own name. "What aren't you telling me?" Victoria's voice came out flat. "Dead." Dr. Chen hesitated. In 20 years of practicing medicine, he'd learned that silence before delivering bad news only made it worse. "Her brain function is deteriorating. At this rate, even if we figure out what's wrong, the damage may be irreversible." "Maybe." "Mrs. Marshall." "Maybe isn't definite." Victoria stood smoothing her Armani suit that she'd been wearing for 36 hours straight. "Which means there's still a chance. A very small chance. I built Marshall Pharmaceuticals from nothing into a $3 billion company by betting on small chances, Dr. Chen. Don't tell me about odds." She walked into her daughter's room, ignoring the nurses who automatically straightened when she entered. Victoria Marshall commanded respect everywhere she went. Boardrooms, galas, Capitol Hill. But here in this room that smelled of antiseptic and desperation, her power meant nothing. "Hey, baby girl." Victoria took Sophia's hand, so small and fragile, in hers. "Mom's here. I'm going to fix this. I promise." Sophia's eyes didn't open, didn't even flutter. A promise Victoria thought bitterly that she had no idea how to keep. 15 miles away, in a 2-bedroom apartment in Dorchester, where the radiator clanked all night and sirens were a lullaby, James Carter was having a different kind of crisis. "Dad, I don't want you to go to work." Marcus, 8 years old and too perceptive for his own good, stood in the doorway of their cramped kitchen. "Something bad is going to happen." James paused, his hands in soapy dishwater from their dinner plates. "Why do you think that, buddy?" "I don't know. I just feel it." James dried his hands and knelt down to his son's level. Marcus had been having these feelings more often lately: anxiety about separation, fear of losing his father the way he'd lost his mother 3 years ago. The child psychologist they'd seen when James could afford the copay called it hypervigilance following trauma. James called it heartbreaking. "Nothing bad is going to happen." He pulled Marcus into a hug. "I'm going to go to the hospital, clean some floors, come home at 7 in the morning, same as always, and you're going to stay with Mrs. Patterson. Eat her famous waffles for breakfast and go to school. Deal." "What if?" "No what ifs. You know what I always tell you." Marcus's voice was muffled against his father's shoulder. "We can't control what happens. We can only control how we respond." "That's right. And how are we going to respond to tonight?" "With courage." "With courage." James pulled back, looking his son in the eyes. "I love you more than anything in this world. You know that, right?" "I know." Marcus hugged him tighter. "I love you too." An hour later, James walked through the employee entrance of Massachusetts General Hospital, nodding to the security guard who'd long since stopped checking his ID. He'd been working the night shift for 3 years, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. cleaning floors, bathrooms, equipment. The pay was decent. The benefits kept Marcus insured, and most importantly, the night shift meant fewer people. Fewer people meant fewer questions about why an ex-army medic with 2 tours in Iraq was pushing a mop instead of working in medicine. Carter, his supervisor Pete Rodriguez, called from the break room. Got a situation on the 4th floor. Some rich lady's daughter in ICU. They've had specialists coming and going all week. Place is a mess. Think you can handle the VIP treatment? Yeah, no problem. James collected his supplies and headed to the elevators. 4th floor, ICU. He'd avoided that ward as much as possible since starting this job. Too many memories of field hospitals, of soldiers dying despite his best efforts, of the metallic smell of blood that still sometimes woke him at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat. But a job was a job. The ICU floor was quiet when he arrived just after midnight. Most of the patients were sedated machines breathing and beeping for them. James methodically cleaned the hallway, the waiting area, the family consultation room that still had crumpled tissues in the trash can. He was mopping outside room 412 when he heard it. Not an alarm, not a shout. Something quieter. A strangled gasp, almost too soft to hear through the closed door. James's body reacted before his brain caught up. He dropped the mop, pushed through the door, and stopped. A little girl lay in the bed, body rigid, eyes rolled back. The monitors were going crazy, but silently someone had muted the alarms. And standing over her, adjusting her IV line with steady hands, was a man in a white coat. "Hey!" James's voice cracked like a whip. "What are you doing?" The man spun around. He was older, maybe 55, with silver hair and the kind of face that appeared on magazine covers, distinguished, trustworthy. Everything about him screamed, "Important doctor." "Who the hell are you?" the man demanded. "I work here." "What are you doing to her?" "I'm her physician, not that it's any of your business." The man's hand was still on the IV port. "Now get out before I call security." But James's eyes had locked onto the syringe in the man's other hand, the medication vial on the tray, and the girl's vitals on the monitor, heart rate climbing, oxygen saturation, dropping, blood pressure spiking in a pattern he'd seen before, in Fallujah, when a local doctor had tried to poison a wounded American soldier. "Step away from her." James moved forward, his voice dropping into the command tone he'd learned leading medical teams under fire. "Now!" "How dare you!" James didn't wait. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisting it away from the IV line. The syringe clattered to the floor. The man tried to pull free, but James had 50 pounds of muscle on him and years of hand-to-hand combat training. "Get your hands off me!" The man's face flushed red. "I'm Dr. Richard Blackwood, Chief Medical Officer of Marshall Pharmaceuticals. I'll have you fired." "Arrested." "Great. You can explain to the police why you were putting something in this girl's IV at midnight with the alarms muted." James didn't let go. "Security! I need security in here now." Footsteps pounded down the hallway. A nurse burst through the door, then another, then Dr. Chen, still in his scrubs from a surgery. "What's going on?" Dr. Chen demanded. "I caught this man." James started. "Dr. Blackwood." Dr. Chen's face shifted from alarm to confusion. "He's on our board. He has privileges here. He was injecting something into the patient's IV line. I was adjusting her medication." Blackwood had recovered his composure, smoothing his white coat. "This janitor assaulted me. I want him arrested immediately." "Dr. Chen." James forced himself to stay calm, even as his heart hammered. "Look at the monitor. Her vitals are all wrong. And look at that syringe." Dr. Chen hesitated, then bent to pick up the syringe with a gloved hand. He read the label. His face changed. This isn't prescribed for this patient." This is a paralytic. Why would you? It was a mistake. Blackwood's voice was smooth as silk. Wrong medication cart. I realized as soon as I checked the label, which is when this man attacked me. Then why were the alarms muted? James pressed. They weren't muted when I arrived. Perhaps a malfunction. Check the administration log, Dr. Chen interrupted, pulling up the tablet. His fingers flew across the screen. His face went pale. Dr. Blackwood, it shows you've been adjusting medications for this patient for the past 3 weeks. But you're not on her care team. I'm consulting. Victoria Marshall. Mrs. Marshall, she's a colleague. She asked me to review her daughter's case. Did she? A new voice cut through the room. Everyone turned. Victoria Marshall stood in the doorway in wrinkled designer clothes, her hair escaping its perfect bun, her makeup smudged. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past few hours. And she looked ready to kill someone. Did I ask you to review my daughter's case, Richard? Her voice was ice. Because I have no recollection of that conversation. Blackwood's expression flickered just for a second, but James saw it. Calculation. Fear. Rage. Victoria, you're upset. You're not thinking clearly. Don't. She moved into the room like a predator stalking prey. Don't you dare tell me what I am or am not thinking. Answer the question. Did I or did I not ask you to treat my daughter? The silence stretched. I was trying to help, Blackwood said finally. Help how? By injecting paralytics into a child who's already dying. Victoria's voice rose. Dr. Chen, I want toxicology run on every medication my daughter has received in the past month. Every single dose. I want security footage from this room. And I want Dr. Blackwood removed from this hospital and banned from ever stepping foot near my daughter again. Victoria, you're making a mistake. The mistake was trusting anyone. She turned to James, seeing him clearly for the first time. You stopped him. Yes, ma'am. What's your name? James Carter. You saved my daughter's life tonight, Mr. Carter. Victoria's eyes, bloodshot, exhausted, but burning with fierce intelligence, held his. I don't know who you are or why you were in this room, but thank you. I'm just a janitor. I heard something wrong. You heard something 9 medical professionals missed. She looked back at Blackwood, who was being escorted out by security, or chose to ignore. The next 6 hours were chaos. Police arrived. Toxicology teams tested every medication in Sophia's room. Hospital administration went into lockdown mode, terrified of lawsuits. And James found himself in an interrogation room explaining over and over what he'd seen. So you just happened to be outside the room. Detective Sarah Morrison, Boston PD, had the exhausted patience of someone who'd heard every story. Convenient timing. I was cleaning the hallway. I heard something. What did you hear? A sound, like someone struggling to breathe. Through a closed door. From the hallway. James met her eyes. I was an Army medic. 2 tours, 82nd Airborne. You learn to hear things other people don't. Morrison's expression shifted slightly. Iraq? Yes, ma'am. My brother served. Marines. He came back different. She tapped her pen against her notepad. The hypervigilance. The constant scanning for threats. Yes, ma'am. So you heard a threat? I heard a child in distress. Morrison studied him for a long moment. The syringe Dr. Blackwood dropped tested positive for rocuronium. It's a paralytic used in surgery. In the dose he was preparing to administer to a 9-year-old girl who already has respiratory issues, it would have been fatal. You saved that kid's life. James's hands clenched under the table. What happens now? Now we investigate. Dr. Blackwood claims it was a medication error. His lawyers are already here and they're good. This could get complicated. She closed her notebook. You're free to go, Mr. Carter. but we'll need you to testify if this goes to trial. Of course. One more question. Why do you work nights as a janitor when you've clearly got medical training? James stood. Because floors don't scream when you can't save them. Dawn was breaking over Boston when James finally left the hospital. He should go home, check on Marcus, try to get a few hours of sleep. But his hands were shaking, adrenaline crash hitting hard. He sat on a bench outside the emergency entrance, head in his hands, breathing through the flashback, trying to claw its way up. A field hospital in Fallujah. A local doctor who'd been helping insurgents poison American soldiers. James had caught him just like tonight, but 2 seconds too late. The soldier had died anyway. "Mr. Carter?" He looked up. Victoria Marshall stood over him, still in the same clothes, still looking like hell. She sat down without invitation. "You're having a panic attack," she observed clinically. "I'm fine." "No, you're not. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 7. Out for 8. It helps." James wanted to tell her to leave him alone. Instead, he followed her instructions. The tightness in his chest eased slightly. "How did you know?" he asked. "I had them for 3 months after my husband left." Victoria's voice was matter-of-fact. "Anxiety medication helped. So did therapy eventually." They sat in silence for a moment. "Dr. Chen told me you're the one who identified my daughter's symptoms the first time she crashed," Victoria said. "2 weeks ago. You left an anonymous note about checking for intracranial pressure." James said nothing. "And 3 weeks before that, you caught a medication error that would have killed a cardiac patient. And last month you noticed a diabetic patient in crisis that the night nurse missed. I just pay attention. You do more than that." Victoria turned to look at him fully. "You have a gift for diagnosis. Dr. Chen says you see patterns that trained physicians miss. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I need an honest answer. What's wrong with my daughter?" "I'm not a doctor." "I'm not asking you as a doctor. I'm asking you as someone who saved her life twice in the past 2 weeks. What do you see that all these specialists don't?" James hesitated. Every instinct told him to walk away. This wasn't his world. These weren't his people. He cleaned floors. He went home to his son. He didn't get involved. But he looked at Victoria Marshall, this powerful woman who'd built an empire, who commanded rooms and moved markets, and saw something he recognized. The same desperation he'd felt watching his wife die. The same helpless rage at a world that refused to be controlled. "She's being poisoned," he said quietly. Victoria went very still. "What?" "The pattern of her symptoms. The way specialists can't diagnose her because she doesn't fit any disease profile. The fact that she's getting worse despite intensive treatment." James pulled out his phone, showing her notes he'd been keeping. "I started tracking her case after the first incident. Look at the timeline. She crashes every 10 to 12 days, always in the evening, always after receiving specific medications." "Dr. Blackwood's medications?" "Yes." Victoria's face had gone sheet white. "Richard Blackwood has been on my board for 6 years. He's a respected researcher, a leader in pediatric medicine. Why would he poison my daughter? I don't know. But this wasn't a medication error tonight. He knew exactly what he was doing, and judging by the logs, he's been doing it for months." Victoria stood abruptly, pacing. "This is insane. You're telling me a man I've worked with for years has been systematically murdering my child? I'm telling you what I see. What you do with that information is up to you. Why haven't you told anyone else? Who would believe a janitor over a chief medical officer?" The question hung in the air. "I would," Victoria said finally. "I believe you. And I'm going to find out why Richard Blackwood is trying to kill my daughter, even if it destroys my company. Even if it destroys me." She looked at James. "Will you help me?" James thought of Marcus waiting at home, of the quiet life he'd built, safe and predictable, of all the reasons he should say no. "Yes," he said. "I'll help you." What neither of them knew was that their agreement would uncover a conspiracy reaching far beyond one sick child. That before this was over, both their families would be in danger, and that the trust they were building in this moment would be the only thing keeping them alive. But that would come later. For now, in the gray dawn light, a CEO and a janitor made an unlikely alliance, and everything changed. Victoria's penthouse office overlooked Boston Harbor, all glass and steel, and minimalist furniture that cost more than James's annual salary. He felt completely out of place in his janitor's uniform, standing on carpet so white he was afraid to move. "Sit." Victoria gestured to a leather chair while she paced phone to her ear. "Yes, I need complete toxicology analysis. Every medication administered to Sophia Marshall for the past 6 months. I don't care if you have to call people in on their day off. Do it. Today." She hung up and immediately dialed another number. "Sandra Victoria Marshall, I need you in my office in 1 hour. Emergency security consultation. And Sandra, this is off the books. Tell no one." Another hang-up. Another call. "Dr. Chen, I need Sophia moved to a private wing. No visitors except people I personally approve. Yes, including Dr. Blackwood. Especially Dr. Blackwood." James watched her orchestrate a dozen moving pieces with the efficiency of a general deploying troops. This was her element: crisis management, strategic planning, decisive action. When she finally stopped, she turned to him. "Coffee. Please." She poured from an expensive machine, her hands steady despite the situation. "Tell me about your military service." "Why?" "Because I'm about to trust you with my daughter's life. I need to know who you are." "Fair enough." James accepted the coffee. Enlisted at 18, Army medic. Completed training, got assigned to the 82nd Airborne. First deployment to Iraq in 2009, second deployment in 2011. What happened in 2011? James's jaw tightened. "My unit was ambushed. I spent 16 hours performing field surgery in a blown-out building with no supplies and insurgents 50 yards away. Saved 11 men. Lost 3. He paused. "One of the men I lost was poisoned by a local doctor who'd infiltrated our support staff. That's how I recognized the pattern with your daughter." Victoria nodded slowly. "And after you came home, got married, had a son, worked as an EMT for 3 years. Then my wife was killed in a car accident. I couldn't—" He stopped. "The job became too much. The constant emergencies. Every call reminded me of what I couldn't save. So I found work that let me be around medicine without being in it. Cleaning floors. Cleaning floors. That's a waste of your skills. That's survival." James met her eyes. "Not everyone gets to use their skills the way they want to, Mrs. Marshall. Some of us do what we have to do to get through the day." A long silence. "You're right," Victoria said quietly. "I apologize. That was privileged of me." The acknowledgement surprised him. Powerful people rarely admitted fault. "What about you?" he asked. "How does a pharmaceutical CEO's daughter end up poisoned by her own board member?" Victoria's expression hardened. "That's what we're going to find out." The investigation began immediately. Sandra Torres, former FBI agent, and now head of private security for Marshall Pharmaceuticals, arrived with a team of forensic accountants, digital specialists, and investigators. "Walk me through it," Sandra said, setting up her laptop on Victoria's conference table. Victoria explained everything: Sophia's mysterious illness, Dr. Blackwood's suspicious behavior, James's intervention. Sandra listened without interruption, her face unreadable. When Victoria finished, Sandra turned to James. "You're sure about the poisoning pattern?" "As sure as I can be without toxicology confirmation." "Which we'll have by end of day." Sandra pulled up files on her screen. "But let's assume you're right. Motive. Why would Richard Blackwood poison your daughter Victoria?" "I don't know. We've had disagreements about company direction, but nothing that would justify." "What kind of disagreements?" Victoria hesitated. 3 years ago, Richard proposed taking Marshall Pharmaceuticals public. He'd been pushing for it since he joined the board. said we needed capital for expansion. And you disagreed. I built this company to research diseases that pharmaceutical giants ignore because they're not profitable enough. Going public means answering to shareholders who care about quarterly returns, not children with rare cancers. So yes, I disagreed, vehemently. Sandra made notes. Who supported Blackwood's position? About 40% of the board. But I have controlling interest, 51% of shares. He couldn't force the issue. Couldn't or can't? Victoria went pale. If I die, my shares transfer to Sophia. If Sophia dies first, they go to the employee trust which Richard chairs. So, if you both die, he controls the company. Yes, but nothing. Sandra's fingers flew across her keyboard. I'm pulling financial records for every board member. James, you said she crashes every 10 to 12 days. Roughly. Victoria, what's your schedule like? Do you follow any patterns? I visit Sophia every day, usually in the evening after work. And that's when she crashes. After your visits. Victoria's face crumbled. You think I'm poisoning her? No, I think someone is poisoning you both. Small doses probably in something you consume regularly. Coffee, tea, wine. The dose in your system isn't enough to kill you outright, but transferred to a 9-year-old through physical contact, food sharing, whatever it would be, devastating. James's mind raced. That's why specialists can't diagnose her. She doesn't have a disease. She has repeated exposure to a toxin that's metabolizing differently in a child's body. Exactly. Which means we test everything Victoria eats and drinks. Everything in her home, her office, her car. Richard doesn't have access to my home, Victoria protested. Are you sure when's the last time he visited? I host board dinners quarterly. The last one was... Victoria pulled up her calendar. 8 months ago, right before Sophia first got sick. Sandra and James exchanged looks. We need to search your house, Sandra said. Every inch. And Victoria, until we know what's happening, you can't go home. That's ridiculous. Your daughter is dying because someone is poisoning her through you. Until we figure out how you're a weapon being used against your own child. Are you willing to risk her life because you don't want to be inconvenienced? The brutal honesty cut through Victoria's protests. She slumped in her chair, all her power and control stripped away by the truth. Where am I supposed to go? My place, James said. Both women looked at him. It's small. In a neighborhood you've probably never been to. But no one knows I'm involved in this. You'll be safe there. I can't just move in with you. That's practical, Sandra interrupted. Actually, it's smart. James, would your son be okay with this? James thought of Marcus. He'll be confused, but he'll understand. Then it's settled. Sandra stood. I'll get my team on the house search. Victoria, go with James. Take nothing from your office. If someone's been poisoning your food, they might have tampered with your belongings too. James, keep her safe. And both of you trust no one. Marcus was eating cereal at their tiny kitchen table when James walked in with Victoria Marshall at 7 in the morning. The boy's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. Dad. Hey, buddy. This is Mrs. Marshall. She's going to stay with us for a few days. Okay. Marcus recovered quickly the way children do. Do you like Cheerios? Victoria looked at the cramped kitchen, the chipped linoleum, the refrigerator covered in Marcus's drawings. She looked so utterly out of place in her designer suit that James almost laughed. Yes. Cheerios are fine. Cool. Dad, I'm going to be late for school. Actually, you're staying home today. James had been dreading this conversation. Something happened at work. Mrs. Marshall's daughter is sick and some bad people might try to hurt her, so she's staying with us where it's safe. Marcus's eyes went wide. Are we in danger? No. But I need you to be really mature about this. Okay, if anyone asks Mrs. Marshall is my friend from the army, that's all. Can you do that? I can do that. Marcus looked at Victoria with sudden intensity. Is your daughter going to die? Marcus? James started. It's okay. Victoria knelt down to Marcus's level. Her voice was thick. I don't know. The doctors are trying very hard to help her, but she's very sick. My mom died. Marcus said it simply the way he'd learned to state facts that still hurt. In a car accident. Dad tried to save her, but he couldn't. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, the first James had seen. I'm so sorry. It's okay. Well, it's not okay. But Dad says we can't control what happens. We can only control how we respond. Your dad is a very smart man. I know. Marcus looked at James. Are you going to save Mrs. Marshall's daughter? Every eye in the room turned to James. The weight of expectation, hope, trust. I'm going to try, he said. Then you will. Marcus said it with absolute certainty. Because you always figure it out. If only it were that simple, James thought. But he didn't say it. Instead, he made breakfast for a CEO and his son in a kitchen where the three of them barely fit. And he tried to figure out how he was going to save a little girl he'd never met from a killer he couldn't identify with resources he didn't have. All he had was an unlikely alliance, a suspicious pattern, and a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. But sometimes that's enough. Sometimes you start with nothing and build everything from there. The question was whether they'd figure it out before Sophia Marshall ran out of time. The toxicology results arrived at noon, delivered by courier to James's apartment because Victoria refused to risk going anywhere near her office. Sandra Torres called the moment the lab confirmed what they'd all suspected. Thallium sulfate, Sandra said without preamble. Low doses over an extended period. The pattern matches exactly with Sophia's symptom timeline. And Victoria, you tested positive too. Your levels are high enough to cause symptoms, but not immediately fatal. Victoria's hand tightened around James's phone. How long have I been poisoned? Based on the concentration and half-life, probably 8 to 10 months. But here's the thing, we found the source. Your coffee. Specifically the private blend you order from that boutique place in Back Bay. Vittorio's. Yeah, someone's been intercepting your deliveries and contaminating them before they reach you. We tracked the delivery route. Guess whose office is on the same floor as Vittorio's distribution center? Richard's pharmaceutical consulting firm. Victoria's voice went flat. He has a satellite office there. I remember because he joked about the coffee smell. James took the phone back. Sandra, if she stops drinking the coffee, will she recover? Eventually. But Sophia's been exposed through secondary contact for months. Her kidneys are compromised. We need to start chelation therapy immediately to bind the thallium and help her body eliminate it. I've already contacted Dr. Chen. He's setting it up now. Does Blackwood know we've figured it out? Not unless someone told him. Why? Because a cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. James glanced at Victoria, who sat rigid on his worn couch. He's been planning this for months. He's not going to just walk away. Which is why I have a team watching him 24/7. He makes a move toward either of you, we'll know. After Sandra hung up, the apartment fell into heavy silence. Marcus had gone to his room, giving the adults space. Outside, sirens wailed, and someone's car alarm blared. Normal city sounds, normal day. Except nothing about this was normal. I did this to her. Victoria's voice cracked. I poisoned my own daughter. No. James moved to sit across from her. Blackwood poisoned you both. You're a victim, not the perpetrator. I should have known. I'm a biochemist, for God's sake. I should have recognized the symptoms. You're also a mother watching her child die. You can't think clearly when you're in that kind of pain. Trust me, I know. Victoria looked up at him. Your wife? James nodded. Angela was hit by a drunk driver. Massive internal injuries. I was first on scene. I was coming home from my shift, saw the accident happen right in front of me. I did everything right. Every protocol, every procedure. But sometimes right isn't enough. He paused. For months afterward, I obsessed over what I could have done differently. If I'd left work 5 minutes earlier, maybe I could have prevented it. If I'd gotten to her 30 seconds faster, if I'd made different choices in treatment. What made you stop? Marcus. He was 5 years old and he'd lost his mother. He needed a father who was present, not one drowning in guilt over things he couldn't control. James leaned forward. You didn't poison Sophia, but you can save her now. That's what matters. Victoria wiped her eyes roughly. I'm not used to feeling helpless. Nobody is. But helpless and powerless aren't the same thing. We have information now. We know what we're fighting. That's power. You sound like a therapist. VA mandated therapy after I came home. Took me 3 years to stop thinking it was bullshit. He offered a small smile. Some of it actually stuck. Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face changed. It's Richard. He's asking to meet. Says it's urgent board business. Don't respond. If I ignore him, he'll know something's wrong. Good. Let him sweat. But Victoria was already typing. I need to control this situation. I can't just hide in your apartment while he plots his next move. Victoria. I'm meeting him, somewhere public. Somewhere he can't try anything. She looked at James. And you're coming with me. That's a terrible idea. Probably, but I didn't build a $3 billion company by playing it safe. James wanted to argue, but he recognized the look in her eyes. He'd seen it in the mirror often enough, the stubborn determination of someone who'd already made up their mind and would do it with or without help. Fine, he said, but we do this my way. Public place daytime, and Sandra's team watching from a distance. And if anything feels wrong, we walk. Agreed. And Victoria, don't underestimate him. He's already tried to kill a child. There's nothing more dangerous than someone with nothing left to lose. The meeting was set for 3 o'clock at a cafe near Boston Common. Victoria chose a table outside, visible from the street. Sandra's team positioned themselves strategically, one at the bookstore across the street. Another jogging past every 10 minutes, a third, reading a newspaper at a nearby bench. James sat 2 tables away, close enough to intervene, but far enough to not be immediately associated with Victoria. He'd changed out of his janitor's uniform into regular clothes, but he still felt exposed. Too many civilians. Too many angles of approach. His training screamed at him that this was a tactical nightmare. Blackwood arrived exactly on time, looking every inch the distinguished physician in his tailored suit and expensive watch. He smiled at Victoria, but James noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes scanned the area before sitting. He knows, James thought. Maybe not everything, but he suspects. Victoria. Blackwood's voice carried false warmth. You look tired. How's Sophia? Fighting. Victoria's tone gave nothing away. What's so urgent it couldn't wait? The board is concerned about your absence. Marshall Pharmaceuticals needs its CEO, especially with the FDA approval hearings next month. The board can manage without me for a few days. Can they? You've been distracted for months. Sophia's illness has clearly taken a toll. Some members are questioning whether you're still capable of leading the company. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Let me guess. You're leading that charge. I'm looking out for the company's interests, and yours. Blackwood leaned forward. Victoria, you're exhausted, emotionally compromised. Perhaps it's time to consider stepping back. Temporarily, of course. Let someone else handle the day-to-day operations while you focus on your daughter. Someone like you. I have the experience and the board's confidence. It would be a natural transition. How convenient that you bring this up now when I'm at my weakest. Blackwood's expression hardened slightly. I'm trying to help you. Are you? Victoria pulled out her phone, setting it on the table between them. Because I have toxicology reports that suggest otherwise. The change in Blackwood was instantaneous. The friendly facade dropped. His eyes went cold and calculating. I don't know what you're talking about. Thallium sulfate. In my coffee. In my daughter's system. administered over months through my contaminated coffee supply. Victoria's voice was steady, but James saw her hands trembling. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? That's an insane accusation. Is it because I have evidence, delivery records, financial transactions linking you to the contamination, security footage? Blackwood was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, colder. What do you want? The truth. Why? You really don't know. He laughed bitterly. Victoria, you're brilliant at business but blind to everything else. 3 years ago, I came to you with an opportunity. Taking Marshall Pharmaceuticals public would have made us both incredibly wealthy. But you refused. Said it wasn't about money, about staying true to the mission. It wasn't. Bullshit. It was about control. You couldn't stand the idea of answering to anyone else. He leaned back. Do you know what I've sacrificed for this company? 20 years of my career. Relationships. Opportunities. And for what? To watch you play saint while sitting on a gold mine. So you decided to murder my daughter. I decided to motivate you. Small doses, just enough to make Sophia sick. Enough to distract you, stress you out, make you vulnerable. Eventually, you'd step down voluntarily. Hand me control. I'd take the company public, we'd all make millions, and then Sophia would mysteriously recover. Everyone wins. Victoria's face had gone white. But it didn't work that way. No. Turns out children metabolize thallium differently than adults. The doses that should have just made her mildly ill nearly killed her. And you're more stubborn than I calculated. Instead of breaking, you dug in deeper. He smiled without humor. I had to adjust my strategy. To killing us both. To removing obstacles. This isn't personal, Victoria. It's business. James's hand moved to his phone, signaling Sandra. This was enough. They had the confession recorded. Time to end this before it escalated. But Blackwood's eyes had shifted, focusing past Victoria to where James sat. Recognition flickered across his face. The janitor, you're working together. He stood abruptly. This is a setup. You're recording this. Richard, sit down. Victoria's voice held command, but Blackwood was already backing away. You think you've won? You have no idea what you're dealing with. This goes so much deeper than you realize. I'm not the only one who wants you gone. What does that mean? But Blackwood was moving fast now, pushing past startled cafe patrons. Sandra's team converged, but he'd chosen his escape route well into the crowded common, where pursuit meant risking civilian casualties. James was up and running before he consciously decided to move. His body operated on training on instinct. He saw Blackwood cut left toward the street, saw the black sedan pulling up with perfect timing. Someone was helping him. This wasn't spontaneous flight. This was planned. James, stop! Victoria's voice behind him, but he couldn't stop. Not when Blackwood was getting away. Not when he might lead them to whoever else was involved. He reached the sedan just as Blackwood dove into the back seat. James got a hand on the door, caught a glimpse of the driver, a woman, blonde, professionally dressed. She looked directly at him with cold eyes and said something he couldn't hear. Then Blackwood kicked out hard, catching James in the chest. He stumbled back. The door slammed. The sedan peeled away, tires screeching. James memorized the license plate even as Sandra's team reached him. Did you get it? Sandra demanded. Yeah. He recited the numbers, breathing hard. And there was a woman driving. Professional. This was coordinated. Victoria caught up to them, face flushed. He said this goes deeper. What does that mean? Sandra was already on her phone, running the plates. Her face darkened. The car's registered to Helix Consulting. It's a corporate strategy firm. I know them. Victoria's voice was tight. They specialize in hostile takeovers. They help companies restructure, push out existing leadership. Richard hired them 6 months ago. He said it was for operational efficiency review. He was planning this for at least that long, James said. Which means there are more people involved, more people who know what he's been doing. And more people who want me gone. Victoria looked shaken for the first time since this began. If they're willing to poison a child to get control of my company, what else will they do? Sandra's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her expression went from concerned to alarmed. "We need to move, now." She grabbed Victoria's arm. "That was my contact at Boston PD. Someone just called in a tip about your location. They're saying you're mentally unstable, that you've kidnapped your daughter from the hospital and are making threats against medical staff." "That's insane." "They're sending units to your apartment, James's address. They have a warrant for your arrest." How did they get a warrant that fast?" "Because Blackwood didn't just plan the poisoning." James's mind raced through the implications. He planned the fallout. He's been building a narrative. Unstable CEO. Grief makes her paranoid. She attacks her own doctor. It all sounds crazy unless you know the truth. "We have the recording," Victoria protested. "We have proof. We have a recording that police haven't verified yet. Right now, it's your word against a respected physician with 20 years of credentials. Who do you think they'll believe?" The sound of sirens in the distance, getting closer. Sandra made a decision. "My car, 3 blocks west. Go now. I'll handle the police, buy you time." "Sandra, go. I'll contact you when it's safe." They ran. Victoria in heels and designer clothes, James in sneakers, both of them dodging through afternoon crowds. Behind them, police cars converged on the cafe officers, jumping out with hands-on weapons. "This way." James pulled Victoria down a side street through an alley he knew from his morning runs. The neighborhood was familiar territory. He'd lived here for 3 years, knew every shortcut. They emerged near a bus stop. James dug out cash, thrust it at Victoria. "Get on the next bus. Any direction. Get off after 3 stops, take a cab, pay cash only. No credit cards, they can track those." "Where are you going?" "To get Marcus. They might go to the school looking for leverage." The thought made his blood run cold. "Meet me at—" He gave her an address, a friend's place from his army days. 2 hours. If I'm not there in 3 hours, run and don't look back. James. Go. Victoria hesitated 1 second longer, then did something unexpected. She squeezed his hand. "Thank you. For everything." Then she was gone, disappearing onto a bus just as sirens wailed past the street. James ran in the opposite direction, every sense on high alert. His phone buzzed. "Sandra. They're at your apartment. I told them you're at work. Bought you maybe 30 minutes. Where's Victoria?" "Safe. I'm getting Marcus." "Good. Listen to me carefully. Blackwood's not working alone, and whoever's helping him has resources. Police contacts, legal, pull money. This is bigger than corporate greed." "How big?" "I don't know yet, but James, watch your back. These people don't leave loose ends." The school was chaos when James arrived. Police cars in the parking lot, officers interviewing the principal. James's heart stopped until he spotted Marcus through a classroom window, safe with his teacher. He texted the teacher, a woman who'd been understanding about Marcus's anxiety issues. "Emergency. Need to get Marcus. Can you bring him to side door?" 3 agonizing minutes later, Marcus emerged with Ms. Chen, confused but obedient. "Mr. Carter." Ms. Chen looked worried. "The police are here asking about you. They said—" "I know what they said. It's not true, but I need to keep Marcus safe while this gets sorted out. Can you trust me?" She studied his face. "Marcus talks about you all the time. How you help him with homework, make him breakfast, teach him to be brave. I don't believe you're dangerous." "Thank you. But Mr. Carter, whatever's happening, be careful. Marcus needs his father." James knelt to Marcus's level. "Hey, buddy, we're going on an adventure." "Are we in trouble?" Marcus's eyes were too knowing for 8 years old. "No. But some people are confused about what's happening, so we need to lay low for a bit. Like hide and seek." "With Mrs. Marshall?" "Yeah, with Mrs. Marshall." They slipped out through the playground, over a fence, through 2 backyards. James's phone buzzed constantly. Sandra with updates. Victoria checking in unknown numbers he didn't answer. His heart hammered, but he kept moving, kept Marcus calm, kept thinking 3 steps ahead, the way he'd learned in combat. The safe house was a basement apartment in Roxbury, owned by Tommy Chen James's old army buddy. Tommy answered the door in basketball shorts and an undershirt, took one look at James's face, and stepped aside. "Don't tell me anything," Tommy said. "Plausible deniability. But you're safe here long as you need." Victoria arrived 20 minutes later, slightly disheveled, but intact. She and Marcus ended up sitting on the worn couch, an odd pair in the dim apartment. Marcus showed her his handheld game. Victoria, to her credit, actually paid attention. James and Tommy stood in the kitchen speaking low. "You in deep?" Tommy asked. "Yeah. The kind that gets people killed." "Maybe." Tommy nodded slowly. "You need weapons." Tommy. "Not asking if you want them. Asking if you need them. Because the James Carter I served with in Fallujah doesn't run unless the threat is real. So I'm asking, do you need weapons?" James thought about Blackwood's cold eyes, about the professional driver, about Sandra's warning that these people didn't leave loose ends, about Marcus and Victoria and Sophia all vulnerable because he'd chosen to get involved. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I need weapons." Tommy disappeared into his bedroom, returned with a lockbox. Inside was a Glock 9mm 2 magazines and a tactical knife. "This stays between us," Tommy said. "And brother, whatever you're protecting, make damn sure it's worth it." James looked through the doorway at Marcus and Victoria, his son, and a woman who'd become something more than just someone he was helping. A partner, an ally, maybe even a friend. "It's worth it," he said. Night fell. In the basement apartment they planned their next move. Victoria had contacted her lawyer, who was working on getting the warrant dismissed. Sandra was digging into Helix Consulting, trying to identify everyone involved. Dr. Chen reported that Sophia was stable and responding well to chelation therapy. Small victories. But not enough. "We're being reactive," Victoria said, pacing the small space. "We need to go on offense." "Against who?" James asked. "We know Blackwood's involved. We know Helix is helping him, but we don't know who else or how deep this goes." "Then we find out." Victoria's eyes held that fierce determination again. "Richard said this goes deeper, that he wasn't the only one who wanted me gone. So who else benefits from my removal? Your board members. Some of them. But they'd benefit from me stepping down voluntarily, not from a scandal that tanks the stock price." She pulled out her phone, pulling up files. "Unless they're planning to buy in after the crash, let the price bottom out, scoop up shares cheap, then push the company public once they have control." James saw where she was going. That's not just hostile takeover. That's systematic destruction and reconstruction. Exactly. And it requires coordination. Legal teams, financial backing, media control. Victoria's fingers flew across her phone. 3 months ago, there was a story about Marshall Pharmaceuticals in the Boston Globe, questioning our financial stability. It was bullshit, but it rattled investors. 2 months ago, one of our major research grants was mysteriously delayed. Last month, we lost a key contract to a competitor who underbid us by exactly enough to win. Someone's been sabotaging you. For months. The poisoning was just one piece. They've been attacking the company from multiple angles. Victoria looked up, and for the first time James saw fear in her eyes. If they're willing to go this far, they won't stop until they finish it, which means Sophia and I are still in danger, and now, so are you and Marcus. The weight of that settled over the room. Marcus had fallen asleep on the couch, his small body curled against a cushion. So innocent, so unaware of the danger circling closer. "We end this," James said. "Not tomorrow, not next week. We end this now before anyone else gets hurt." How? We do what they don't expect. We stop hiding and we attack. James pulled out his phone, calling Sandra. How fast can you get me information on everyone at Helix Consulting Everything? Financial records, personal lives, weaknesses. 48 hours. You have 12. And Sandra, we're going to need more than information. We're going to need leverage, the kind that makes people very uncomfortable. You're talking about blackmail. I'm talking about survival. They poisoned a child. They're framing an innocent woman. They've made this war. I'm just planning to win it. After he hung up, Victoria looked at him differently. You're not really a janitor, are you? I mop floors. That makes me a janitor. You know what I mean. The way you think, the way you move. You're not just an ex-medic. James was quiet for a moment. In Fallujah, I didn't just treat wounded. I interrogated prisoners, gathered intelligence, planned operations. The army trains medics to save lives. But in a war zone, sometimes saving one life means taking others. I got good at both. Does that bother you? Every day. But it doesn't stop me from doing what needs to be done. He met her eyes. These people threatened your daughter. They've put my son in danger. I don't care how rich or connected they are. I will end them. The conviction in his voice was absolute. Victoria nodded slowly. Then let's end them. They worked through the night building a strategy. Victoria used her business knowledge to map out vulnerabilities in Helix's structure. James applied tactical thinking to plan their moves. By dawn, they had something resembling a plan. It was risky. It was probably illegal in several ways, but it was their only shot. Marcus woke to find his father and Victoria still up, surrounded by papers and laptops. He rubbed his eyes. Did you guys sleep? Not yet, buddy. James ruffled his son's hair. But soon. Are we still on our adventure? Yeah, we are. Okay. Marcus accepted this with the resilience of a child who'd learned young that life was unpredictable. Can we have breakfast? Tommy emerged from his room, already dressed. I'll get something. You guys look like death. After Tommy left, Marcus climbed onto the couch next to Victoria. Is your daughter going to be okay? Victoria's expression softened. The doctors think so. She's getting better. Good. It's scary when parents aren't there. When my mom died, I was scared Dad would leave too. He won't. Victoria said it with certainty. Your father is the most loyal person I've ever met. He doesn't abandon people. Marcus nodded. I know. That's why I wasn't really scared last night. Because Dad always figures it out. The simple faith was humbling. James felt the weight of it, this child's complete trust in him. He couldn't fail. Not when Marcus believed so absolutely that he wouldn't. Sandra called at 8 a.m. Got what you needed. You're not going to like it. Tell me. Helix Consulting is owned by a holding company. That company is owned by another shell corporation. Follow the chain far enough, and you get to a very interesting name, William Marshall. Victoria's face went white. My ex-husband. The same. He's been buying up Marshall Pharmaceuticals stock through intermediaries for 2 years. Not enough to trigger SEC reporting, but enough to matter. Combined with some board members who've been secretly selling their shares to him, he's positioned to take control if Victoria dies or is forced out. William's been in London, Victoria said weakly. He hasn't contacted me in 3 years. He's been planning this for at least that long. Probably longer. I'm guessing the divorce wasn't amicable. He wanted me to give up the company, be a traditional wife and mother. I refused. When I filed for divorce, he tried to get controlling interest in the settlement. I fought him. The judge ruled in my favor. Victoria's voice was hollow. He swore he'd make me regret it. Well, he's making good on that promise. Sandra paused. There's more. Sophia's father, William. Yeah, I don't know how to tell you this gently, so I'm just going to say it. There's evidence suggesting he knew about the poisoning. Emails between him and Blackwood discussing accelerating the timeline and managing the girl's condition. The silence that followed was suffocating. James watched Victoria process the information. saw something break behind her eyes. "He knew someone was poisoning our daughter," she whispered. "He knew, and he let it happen." "It's worse than that. He orchestrated it. Blackwood was the tool. William was the architect." Victoria stood abruptly, walked to the bathroom, and James heard her being sick. Marcus looked scared. "Is Mrs. Marshall okay?" "She just got some very bad news." James pulled his son close. "Sometimes grown-ups need a minute to be sad." When Victoria emerged, her eyes were red but her jaw was set. "Where is William now?" "London. But he's got a flight to Boston tomorrow. Probably planning to sweep in and play the concerned ex-husband once you're arrested." "Then we meet him at the airport." Victoria's voice was ice. "And we end this." James stood. "Victoria, if we confront him without solid evidence, he'll just lawyer up and disappear. We need proof that sticks. Proof that can't be explained away or buried." "What kind of proof?" "The kind he gives us himself." James pulled out his phone. "Sandra, can you get me William Marshall's itinerary? Every meeting, every contact, every place he's planning to be in the next 48 hours. "I can do that." "Good, because we're going to give him exactly what he wants, Victoria vulnerable, desperate, and willing to deal. And when he comes to collect his prize, we're going to record every word." "That's entrapment," Victoria said. "No, that's justice. And it's the only way we protect Sophia Marcus and everyone else he's planning to destroy." Victoria looked at Marcus sleeping peacefully, despite the adult drama surrounding him. Then she looked at James. "Do it," she said. "Whatever it takes. I want my ex-husband destroyed." And in that moment, James saw the steel that had built a pharmaceutical empire. Victoria Marshall wasn't just a mother protecting her child. She was a warrior preparing for battle. And heaven help anyone who stood in her way. The plan came together in Tommy's cramped living room over cold pizza and too much coffee. Sandra worked her laptop from the kitchen table while Victoria made calls to trusted contacts, carefully avoiding anyone who might be compromised. James sat on the floor with Marcus half listening to his son's chatter about superheroes while his mind calculated angles and contingencies. "William lands at Logan at 3 p.m. tomorrow," Sandra said, reading from her screen. "He's booked at the Four Seasons, meeting with the board's legal counsel at 6, dinner with 3 board members at 8. "He's moving fast," Victoria said. "Probably expects me to be in custody by then." "Which is exactly what we'll let him think." James stood stretching muscles tight from tension. "Sandra, can you get someone to leak to the press that Victoria's been taken in for questioning? Make it look real." "Already done. Boston Globe will run it online in an hour. Local news will pick it up by evening." Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression hardened. "Speak of the devil. William just texted me. Says he heard about Sophia's condition, and he's coming to Boston to help." "What did he say exactly?" James moved to read over her shoulder. Victoria pulled up the message. "Victoria, I know we've had our differences, but Sophia is still my daughter. I'm flying in tomorrow. We should talk. For her sake." "For her sake," James repeated. "The daughter he helped poison. That takes a special kind of sociopath." William was always good at playing the concerned father when it suited him. Victoria's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "What do I say?" "Tell him you're desperate, that the doctors don't know what's wrong and you're out of options. Appeal to his ego. Make him think he's won." Victoria typed slowly. "I don't know what to do anymore. The specialists can't help her. Maybe we should talk. For Sophia." She hit send. They all stared at the phone, waiting. 30 seconds later it buzzed. "I'll come straight from the airport. Send me the address where you're staying." "Don't give him Tommy's location," James said quickly. "Sandra is there somewhere we can control, somewhere we can record everything without him knowing." Sandra thought for a moment. "I've got a property in Cambridge. Small house used for surveillance operations. It's clean, secure, and I can have it wired for audio and video in 4 hours. Do it. Victoria was already moving energy, replacing exhaustion. James, I need you there with me when he arrives. Not visible, but close. If this goes wrong, it won't. If it goes wrong, she continued firmly, I need someone who can protect Sophia. If William's been willing to poison her to get to me, there's no telling what he'll do if he's cornered. The weight of that settled over James. He looked at Marcus, who'd stopped playing and was watching the adults with worried eyes. Dad is the bad man coming. James knelt beside his son. Yeah, buddy, but we're ready for him. Are you scared? The honest answer was yes. James was terrified, not of confrontation or violence, he'd been trained for that, but of failure, of letting down Victoria and Sophia and Marcus and everyone counting on him to hold the line. A little scared, he admitted, but being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right, even when you're scared. Marcus nodded solemnly, like when you went into that burning building to save Mrs. Chen's cat. That was different. The building wasn't that. James stopped. Wait, how do you know about that? Mrs. Patterson told me. She said you're a hero. Marcus hugged him tight. So you'll win tomorrow, because heroes always win. If only real life worked like children's stories, James thought. But he hugged his son back and said, Yeah, buddy, we'll win. Tommy agreed to keep Marcus during the confrontation. James hated leaving him, but bringing an 8-year-old to what was essentially an ambush was out of the question. They spent the evening doing normal things, playing games, watching cartoons, pretending tomorrow wasn't coming. Marcus fell asleep around 9, curled up on the couch with his head in James's lap. Victoria sat across from them, watching with an expression James couldn't quite read. You're a good father, she said quietly. I try. No, I mean it. Marcus is lucky to have you. She paused. Sophia used to tell me she wished her dad was more like other dads. The ones who came to school plays and helped with science projects. I always made excuses for William. Said he was busy, important. I was lying to her and to myself. You were protecting her. Was I? Or was I protecting my own pride, not wanting to admit I'd married someone who cared more about control than love? Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. When William left, part of me was relieved. No more fighting, no more compromises. But Sophia cried for weeks. And I was so focused on running the company, proving I could do it alone, that I missed how much she was hurting. Victoria. If I'd paid more attention, maybe I would have noticed something was wrong sooner. Maybe I could have prevented months of poisoning. Maybe... Stop. James's voice was gentle but firm. I've played the maybe game. It's a losing proposition. You did the best you could with the information you had. That's all anyone can do. Is it enough? It has to be. Because the alternative is drowning in guilt, and Sophia needs you whole, not broken. Victoria wiped her eyes. When did a janitor become so wise? When a stubborn CEO refused to let him hide anymore. James smiled slightly. You push people you know that push them to be better than they think they can be. I'm not trying to push you. I know. That's what makes it work. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Marcus's soft breathing the only sound. Then Victoria spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. James, after this is over, after William's dealt with, and Sophia's safe, what happens to us? What do you mean? I mean this unlikely partnership. You and me, our kids, what we've built these past few days. She looked at him directly. Do we go back to separate worlds? You cleaning floors, me running a company? Or is there something here worth keeping? James had been carefully not thinking about that question, about what it meant that he felt more connected to Victoria Marshall after 4 days than he'd felt to anyone since Angela died, about how natural it felt to plan and fight alongside her, about how Marcus had started calling her Mrs. V with easy affection. "I don't know," he said honestly. "This whole situation is extreme. People bond in crisis. It doesn't always translate to normal life." "What if I don't want normal life?" Victoria leaned forward. "What if I want this? Someone who sees me as more than a title or a bank account. Someone who challenges me to be better. Someone who—" She stopped, seeming to catch herself. "I'm sorry. That's not fair to put on you right now." "Victoria. Forget I said anything. We should focus on tomorrow." She stood quickly. "I'm going to try to get some sleep. Big day ahead." After she disappeared into Tommy's spare room, James sat in the dim living room with his sleeping son and tried to untangle his own feelings. He'd told himself he was helping Victoria because it was the right thing to do, because Sophia deserved justice, because he couldn't stand by and watch a child suffer when he had the skills to help. But somewhere along the way, it had become more than that. Victoria herself had become someone he cared about protecting, not just as a victim of circumstance, but as a person. A complicated, driven, sometimes infuriating person who'd somehow worked her way into his carefully guarded heart. The question was whether he was ready to acknowledge that, and what it would mean if he did. He was still wrestling with it when Sandra arrived at midnight with equipment for the next day's operation. "Got everything we need," she said, setting down cases. "Cameras, mics, recording equipment. The house is ready. Once William starts talking, we'll have him 6 ways from Sunday. And if he doesn't talk, if he's smart enough to keep quiet—" Sandra smiled grimly. "Then we move to Plan B, which is—" "You really want to know?" James thought about it. "Probably not." "Smart man." Sandra poured herself coffee from the pot that had been going all day. "You know this might not work right. William could lawyer up the second he smells a trap. Blackwood could disappear. The board members could claim ignorance. These people have resources and protection we can't match." "I know. But you're doing it anyway." "Yeah. Why? You barely knew Victoria Marshall a week ago. This isn't your fight." James looked toward the spare room where Victoria slept. "Maybe not. But it became my fight the moment I walked into that hospital room and saw a little girl dying while her mother watched helplessly. I've been that helpless. I won't stand by and watch someone else go through it if I can help. Even if it costs you everything. Even then." Sandra studied him for a long moment. "You're a good man, James Carter. Better than most. Just make sure being good doesn't get you killed." Morning came too fast. James woke stiff from sleeping upright in a chair, Marcus still curled against him. Victoria emerged looking hollow-eyed but determined. They ate breakfast in near silence, each lost in their own thoughts about what the day would bring. At noon, Sandra called. "William's plane landed early. He's at the Four Seasons checking in. I've got eyes on him." "When's he planning to come to Cambridge?" Victoria asked. "He texted asking for the address. Says he'll be there at 2. 2 hours. James felt his combat mindset clicking into place, the calm focus that came before action. He'd learned it in training, perfected it in Iraq, thought he'd left it behind when he came home. But the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. "Marcus, buddy." James knelt beside his son. "You're going to stay with Tommy today. He's going to take you to the movies, get ice cream, fun stuff." "But I want to help." "You are helping. By staying safe, you're helping. The best thing you can do for me right now is not worry, okay?" Marcus's lip trembled. "Promise you'll come back." "I promise." James pulled him into a tight hug. "I love you more than anything in this world. Never forget that." "Love you too, Dad." Saying goodbye to Marcus was harder than any mission brief James had ever received. Watching his son's small hand wave from Tommy's car window felt like tearing out a piece of his heart. But he couldn't think about that now. Couldn't afford the distraction. The house in Cambridge was small and ordinary looking from the outside. Inside, Sandra's team had transformed it into a surveillance hub. Cameras hidden in light fixtures and smoke detectors. Microphones in the walls. Recording equipment in the basement where James would wait and watch. Victoria would face William alone. That had been the hardest sell. James's every instinct screamed to be in the room with her. But William would never talk freely with a stranger present. So James would watch from below, ready to intervene if things went wrong. "Test the panic button," Sandra instructed, handing Victoria a small device disguised as a pendant. "Press it and we're through that door in 5 seconds." Victoria pressed it. James, watching from the basement monitor, saw the signal flash. He took the stairs 3 at a time, burst through the door, weapon drawn. Sandra timed it. 4.3 seconds. Good enough. She looked at Victoria. "You sure you can do this?" "No." Victoria's voice was steady despite the admission. "But I'm doing it anyway." At 1:55 p.m., a black town car pulled up outside. William Marshall emerged, and James got his first look at the man who'd orchestrated months of poisoning his own daughter. He was handsome in a calculated way, expensive suit, perfect haircut, the kind of smile that probably charmed investors and intimidated rivals. He carried a briefcase and a bouquet of flowers. Flowers. For the woman he'd been trying to destroy. The audacity was breathtaking. Victoria opened the door at his knock. James watched on the monitor as William's expression shifted through surprise, concern, and something that might have been genuine emotion if James didn't know better. "Victoria." William stepped forward as if to embrace her. "You look exhausted. I came as soon as I heard." Victoria didn't move into the hug. "You said we should talk." "Of course. Of course." William handed her the flowers. She took them mechanically. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside. He entered, glancing around the modest house with barely concealed disdain. "Is this where you've been staying? It's quite a change from the penthouse." "The penthouse wasn't safe." "Safe?" William's brow furrowed with practiced concern. "Victoria, what's going on? Your message said Sophia's condition has worsened. The board told me you've been erratic, missing meetings. There are rumors about police involvement." "How much do you know?" Victoria interrupted. "About what?" "Don't play games, William. How much do you know about what's been happening to Sophia?" Something flickered in William's eyes. "I know our daughter is seriously ill with a mysterious condition that's baffled specialists for months. I know you've been under tremendous stress. That's why I'm here. To help." "To help?" Victoria laughed, a broken sound. "You haven't called Sophia in 2 years. You've had no interest in being her father, but now suddenly you want to help?" "I know I've been absent. I regret that. But Victoria, she's still my daughter. Our daughter. Whatever's happened between us, that doesn't change." He moved closer. "Let me help. I have connections, resources. We can get her into better facilities, see different specialists. She's being poisoned, William." The words hung in the air. William's face went carefully blank. "What?" "Thallium sulfate. Someone's been poisoning me for months. Sophia's been exposed through secondary contact. That's why specialists can't diagnose her. There's no disease to diagnose." Victoria's voice was ice. "Did you know that? That's insane. Who would? Richard Blackwood, your friend, the man you've been in contact with for the past year. The man who works for Helix Consulting, which is owned by your shell corporation." William was quiet for 3 long seconds. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. The fake concern dropped. What remained was cold calculation. "You've been investigating me. Was it supposed to be me who died first? Or were you planning to kill us both at once and make it look like murder-suicide?" "Victoria, you're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years." She took a step toward him. "You wanted the company. Tried to take it, and the divorce failed. So you decided to take it by force. Discredit me, poison me, frame me as unstable. Remove me from the picture and swoop in as the concerned ex-husband. Take control of Marshall Pharmaceuticals and sell it for parts. You can't prove any of that. Can't I? I have emails between you and Blackwood. Financial records showing your stock purchases through shell companies. Evidence of the poisoning. Victoria's voice rose. I have everything, William. Everything. No. William's expression had gone hard. You have fragments, circumstantial evidence that any lawyer can tear apart. You think the board will believe you over me. You, who's been absent from meetings, erratic in behavior, clearly suffering from paranoid delusions brought on by stress. He smiled without warmth. I've been building the narrative for months, Victoria. Everyone already believes you're losing your mind. Even if you had concrete proof, which you don't, who would believe the crazy woman? In the basement, James's hands clenched. Every instinct screamed to rush upstairs to end this conversation with force. But Victoria had insisted she needed William to say it all, needed him to incriminate himself completely. What about Sophia? Victoria's voice cracked. She's your daughter. How could you let someone poison her? Collateral damage. William said it so casually. Blackwood assured me the doses were calibrated for you. The fact that Sophia got sick was an unfortunate miscalculation. But honestly, it worked in our favor. Made you even more unstable, more distracted. She almost died. But she didn't. She's recovering nicely, I'm told. See, no real harm done. Victoria's hand moved toward the panic button. James was already moving, taking the stairs at a run. But Victoria's voice stopped him. No real harm. Our daughter spent months suffering. She lost cognitive function. She couldn't remember her own name. And you call that no real harm? Oh, please. William's patience was clearly exhausted. Sophia was always just a tool to control you. I never wanted children. That was your dream, your need. I went along with it because it kept you focused on something other than work. But after she was born, all you cared about was being a mother and running your precious company. You had no time for being a proper wife. A proper wife, Victoria repeated. You mean someone who'd give up everything to serve your ego? Someone who understood their place, but you never did. You always had to be in charge, always had to win. William's voice filled with venom. Do you know how it felt? Being introduced as Victoria Marshall's husband, having people ask me what it was like to be married to such a successful woman, the pity in their eyes. I built a respectable career, but I was always in your shadow. So you decided to destroy me. I decided to take what should have been mine from the start. Marshall Pharmaceuticals should be my company. I'm the one with the PhD in business strategy. I'm the one who could have made it truly great instead of your bleeding heart crusade to save every sick kid in the world at the expense of profits. Those sick kids are the point, William. The whole point. The point is money, power, respect, everything you denied me during our marriage. He straightened his jacket. But that ends now. You're going to sign over your shares to me. You're going to step down as CEO citing health reasons. You're going to disappear quietly and let me fix the disaster you've made of my company. Or what? Or Sophia has a relapse. A tragic one this time. Fatal. William's smile was poison. Blackwood's already prepared the syringe. One call from me and your daughter dies. Then you follow. And I get everything anyway, just with more paperwork. The basement door burst open. James came through with Sandra and 2 other agents right behind him. William spun, reaching into his briefcase, but James was faster. He had William face down on the floor in 3 seconds, arm twisted behind his back, the fight over before it began. That was all recorded, Sandra said, holding up her phone where the live stream had been running. Every word, every threat, including your plan to murder a child. William's face pressed against the carpet. You can't use that. It's entrapment. Inadmissible. Maybe. But the FBI agent listening to the stream from Boston field office doesn't think so. And even if it doesn't hold up in criminal court, I guarantee every media outlet in the country will play that recording. How do you think your board meetings will go when everyone knows you plan to kill your own daughter? The color drained from William's face. Victoria, please. Be reasonable. We can work this out. No. Victoria's voice was firm. "We're done working things out. You're done threatening my daughter. You're done threatening me." She looked at James. "Get him out of my sight." Sandra's team hauled William up. He twisted against their grip, desperation replacing arrogance. "You think you've won. There are others involved. People more powerful than me. They won't let this go." "Then they can join you in federal prison," James said. "Give Sandra their names. Maybe you'll get a reduced sentence." "I want my lawyer. I'm not saying anything else without—" "Save it for booking." Sandra nodded to her team. "Take him." After they dragged William out, still protesting, the house fell silent. Victoria stood frozen in the middle of the room, shaking. James approached carefully. "You did it. It's over." "Is it?" Victoria looked at him with haunted eyes. "He said there are others. What if he's telling the truth? What if this isn't finished? Then we'll deal with them too, together." James pulled her into his arms. She resisted for half a second, then collapsed against him, finally letting the tears come. "I married that man," she sobbed. "I had a child with him. How did I not see what he was? Because people like him are good at hiding it. That's not your fault." They stood like that for a long time, Victoria crying against James's shoulder while he held her and let her break. Outside, sirens approached. Inside, the recording equipment captured a different kind of truth. Two people who'd been strangers a week ago, now bound by shared trauma and unlikely trust. When Victoria finally pulled back, her eyes were red but clear. "Thank you. For everything. For believing me when no one else did. For protecting Sophia. For—" She stopped. "For being exactly what we needed." "We're not done yet," James said. "William was right about one thing. There are others involved. Board members who sold you out. Blackwood's still out there. Helix Consulting. This was one battle, not the war. I know. Victoria straightened, that familiar determination returning. "But now we know what we're fighting, and we have evidence, and—" She looked at him with something that might have been hope. "We have each other." Before James could respond, his phone rang. Tommy's number. "James, man, you need to get back here now." Tommy's voice was tight with tension. "Someone came by asking about Marcus. Big guy, professional looking. Said he was with Child Services investigating a report. But James, he didn't have proper ID. And when I pressed him, he left fast. Real fast." Ice flooded James's veins. "Where's Marcus?" "Safe. I've got him locked in my apartment with my service weapon. But James, if they know about him—" "I'm on my way. Don't open the door for anyone. Anyone." He hung up and looked at Victoria. "They're going after Marcus." Her face went pale. "William said there were others." He wasn't bluffing. James was already moving toward the door. "They can't get to you through legal means anymore, so they're going for leverage. Sandra." Sandra appeared from the back room where she'd been processing William. "What's wrong?" "Someone just tried to grab my son. We need protection on him and on Sophia. Now." "Already done. I've got teams at the hospital with Sophia. I'll send backup to your friend's place." "Not good enough. These people have been planning this for months. They'll have contingencies." James's mind raced through possibilities, tactics, threats. "We need to disappear, all of us, until we can identify everyone involved and neutralize them." Victoria grabbed his arm. "There's a property. Vermont, near the Canadian border. My family's old cabin. No one knows about it. I bought it privately after the divorce. No records linking it to me. We could go there." "How remote?" 40 acres, closest neighbor 5 miles away. One road and heavily wooded. I used to take Sophia there to get away from everything." James calculated. Remote meant defensible, but it also meant isolated, cut off from help if things went wrong. Still staying in Boston meant being targets in a shooting gallery. "How fast can we get Sophia there without risking her health?" Victoria pulled out her phone, calling Dr. Chen. "Ray, I need Sophia mobile within 2 hours. I don't care what it takes. Her life depends on it." She listened. "Yes, I'm serious. I'll explain later. Just get her ready." After she hung up, Sandra spoke. "I can provide escort. 2 vehicles, armed agents. But James, if you're wrong about this threat." "I'm not wrong. Someone just tried to take my son." He looked at both women. "We end this in Vermont. We identify everyone involved, we gather evidence, and we finish what we started. But we do it off the grid where they can't get to our kids." "Agreed," Victoria said. Sandra nodded slowly. "Then let's move, before they realize William's been arrested and panic." The next hour was controlled chaos. James picked up Marcus from Tommy's, the boy wide-eyed but trying to be brave. Victoria and Sandra coordinated Sophia's transfer from the hospital, a risky move, but staying made her a sitting target. Dr. Chen arranged for portable medical equipment and a nurse to travel with them. They met at a parking garage in Somerville, 2 black SUVs idling in the shadows. Marcus clutched James's hand tight. "Dad, where are we going?" "Somewhere safe, buddy, like a real adventure this time." "With Mrs. V." "Yeah, with Mrs. V." Victoria emerged from the second SUV carrying Sophia wrapped in blankets. The girl was awake but groggy, confused by the sudden movement. When she saw Marcus, though, her face brightened. "Hi." "Hi," Marcus said shyly. "I'm Marcus. Are you Sophia?" "Yeah." "We're going on an adventure together. To keep the bad guys away." Sophia considered this. Despite everything she'd been through, she managed a small smile. "Okay, adventures are good." James watched the 2 children, his son and Victoria's daughter, both innocent victims of adult greed and violence. Something fierce and protective rose in his chest. These kids would be safe. Whatever it cost him, however far he had to go, they would be safe. Victoria met his eyes over the children's heads. She nodded once, a silent agreement. They loaded into the vehicles and pulled out into Boston traffic, heading north toward Vermont and whatever waited there. Behind them, the city faded into darkness. Ahead, uncertainty and danger, but also hope. Also the possibility of ending this nightmare once and for all. James Carter had spent 3 years hiding from his past, from his skills, from the warrior he'd been trained to be. But there was no more hiding, not when everything that mattered was on the line. The war had come to him whether he wanted it or not, and this time he was going to win. The drive north took 4 hours through darkening countryside. James rode in the lead vehicle with Marcus and 2 of Sandra's agents constantly checking the mirrors for tails. Behind them, Victoria's SUV carried Sophia the nurse and 3 more armed guards. They switched routes twice, doubled back once, and took a service road that added 30 minutes but ensured no one followed. Marcus fell asleep against James's shoulder somewhere past Concord, his small body finally surrendering to exhaustion. James envied him that ability to just shut down when the world got too heavy. His own mind wouldn't stop running scenarios, how many people were involved, what resources they had, how far they'd go to tie up loose ends. "You did 2 tours, right?" The agent driving a woman named Chen, who wasn't related to the doctor despite the same last name, glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Iraq." "Yeah. My brother served, Marines, Ramadi 2006. She was quiet for a moment. "He didn't make it home." "I'm sorry. He used to say the worst part wasn't the combat. It was bringing it home with you. The hypervigilance, the inability to trust. He said it was like living in 2 worlds at once. The safe one everyone else sees, and the dangerous one you can't stop seeing underneath." She met his eyes in the mirror. "That what this feels like for you?" James looked at his sleeping son, then out at the dark woods rushing past. "Every day since I came home." "But you're doing it anyway, jumping back in. Not much choice when someone threatens your kid." "There's always a choice. You could have walked away, let the professionals handle it. Instead, you're driving into the woods with a billionaire and her dying daughter being hunted by people with serious resources." Chen's voice held respect, not judgment. "That's not instinct. That's character." James didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. But her words stayed with him as the miles rolled past and the GPS announced they were 30 minutes from the cabin. Victoria's property sat at the end of a dirt road that wound through thick pine forest. The cabin itself was larger than James expected. 3 bedrooms, a full kitchen, solar panels on the roof for off-grid power, propane for heat and cooking, a well for water. It was designed for long-term isolation, which made sense for someone who'd wanted a true escape. "I bought it 5 years ago," Victoria explained as they unloaded. "After William left. I needed somewhere that was just mine. Somewhere he'd never touched, never knew about. Sophia and I would come here for weekends, just the 2 of us." They got Sophia settled in the master bedroom where the nurse could monitor her vitals. The girl was awake now, asking questions in that direct way children have. "Are we hiding from bad people?" Victoria smoothed her daughter's hair. "We're staying safe while some problems get solved." "Is the janitor man going to solve them?" James, standing in the doorway, felt everyone's eyes turn to him. "I'm going to try." "Good." Sophia's voice was thin but determined. "I'm tired of being sick. I want to go home and play soccer again." "You will," Victoria promised. "Soon." After Sophia drifted off, the adults gathered in the main room. Sandra had stayed behind in Boston to coordinate with the FBI, but she'd sent her best people, Chen and her partner Rodriguez, in one vehicle, Davis and Martinez in the other. All former military, all experienced in protection details. "We need to talk about Endgame," Davis said. He was older, maybe 50, with the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much. "William Marshall's in custody, but that doesn't end this. The people backing him, the board members, Helix Consulting, whoever else they're still out there. Sandra's working on identifying them," James said. "She's tracing financial records, communications, everything connected to the conspiracy." "How long will that take?" 48 to 72 hours for solid evidence." Rodriguez whistled low. "That's a long time to sit exposed out here. One road in means one road out. If they find us..." "They won't." Victoria's voice was firm. "No one knows about this place. I've kept it completely separate from my business life." "What about property records?" Martinez asked. "Satellite imagery. These people have resources. If they're motivated enough. The property's in a trust under my maiden name. Different county, different state. No digital trail connecting it to Marshall Pharmaceuticals or my current identity." Victoria looked at each of them. "I know it's not perfect, but it's the best chance we have to protect the kids while we build an airtight case." James appreciated that she said we, not "you protect us while I hide." She'd become a partner in this, not just a victim to be shielded. That mattered. "Okay," Davis said. "Then we set up proper security. I want motion sensors on the access road cameras covering all approaches. We establish a watch rotation, rules of engagement, evacuation protocols if this goes sideways." "I'll take first watch," James offered. "Negative. You've been running on fumes for days. Rodriguez and I will take tonight. You get some sleep." James wanted to argue, but his body was already betraying him. Muscles aching, eyes burning, exhaustion pulling at his bones. He'd been operating on adrenaline and coffee since this started. Eventually, the debt came due. Marcus was already asleep in one of the bedrooms, curled up with the stuffed rabbit he'd had since his mother died. James stood in the doorway, watching his son's chest rise and fall, steady and peaceful. Safe, at least for now. "He's a good kid." James turned. Victoria stood behind him, her own exhaustion evident in the shadows under her eyes. "Takes after his mother. She was the best person I ever knew." "Tell me about her." They moved to the living room, speaking quietly so as not to wake the children. James found himself talking about Angela, how they'd met at a community college where she was studying nursing, and he was using his GI Bill, how she'd laughed at his terrible jokes, how she'd held Marcus 5 minutes after he was born and cried with joy. How 3 years later, a drunk driver had stolen all of that in an instant. "She would have liked you," James said. "Angela always said I needed someone to push me out of my comfort zone. That I was too comfortable hiding. Is that what you were doing? Hiding? Yeah, from anything that reminded me of who I used to be, what I used to do. Cleaning floors let me be invisible, safe. After Angela died, invisible felt like all I could handle. You're not invisible anymore, Victoria said softly. No, I'm really not. He looked at her. What about you? What were you hiding from? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Failure, I think. William used to say I couldn't accept being wrong about anything, that I had to win every argument, control every outcome. After he left, I told myself he was just intimidated by my success, but maybe he had a point. Maybe I was so focused on being strong, being capable, that I forgot how to just be human. You're human. Trust me. I've seen you break down enough times to know. Is that what this is? Breaking down? No, it's being real. There's a difference. James hesitated, then continued. These past few days working with you, you've been more than some Ice Queen CEO. You've been brave and smart and willing to fight for what matters. That's not weakness. That's strength. Victoria's eyes shimmered. I poisoned my own daughter, James. What kind of mother does that make me? The kind who didn't know she was being poisoned herself. The kind who's risking everything to make it right. He reached over, took her hand. You're not defined by what was done to you. You're defined by how you respond. And Victoria, you're responding like a warrior. She squeezed his hand, and something passed between them. Understanding connection, the recognition of two damaged people finding unexpected strength in each other. James, after this is over. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Sandra's name on the screen. He answered, putting it on speaker. We've got a problem, Sandra said without preamble. William Marshall made bail 2 hours ago. James felt ice flood his veins. How is that possible? He threatened to murder a child on tape. His lawyers argued the recording was obtained under duress, that he was entrapped, that his statements were taken out of context. The judge set bail at $5 million. William posted it immediately. Where is he now? Unknown. He walked out of the courthouse and disappeared. We've got people looking, but James, if he knows where you are, he doesn't. There's no way he could. Are you sure? Because 3 hours after he posted bail, Dr. Richard Blackwood vanished from protective custody. And the board member we were about to arrest for conspiracy found dead in his home office. Apparent suicide, except the forensics don't match. Victoria's face had gone white. They're cleaning house, eliminating anyone who could testify against them. That's my read, Sandra confirmed. Which means you're not just witnesses anymore. You're loose ends, and these people are tying them off. How much evidence do you have? James asked. Enough to make arrests if we can find them. But right now, 3 of our key suspects are in the wind. William Blackwood and a woman named Patricia Vance, who was Helix Consulting's primary liaison with Marshall Pharmaceuticals Board. What about the recording of William's confession? Still admissible for some charges, but his lawyers are shredding it in the media. Painting Victoria as unstable, claiming she orchestrated the whole thing to frame her innocent ex-husband. Half the country believes them. Victoria made a sound of frustration. Of course they do. William always was good at controlling narratives. We need more, Sandra continued. Solid evidence that can't be disputed. Financial records communications, something that proves conspiracy beyond William's word against yours. Where do we find that? James asked. William's computer, his phone, physical evidence from his office or home, but we can't get warrants without probable cause that'll stand up in court, and right now, everything's circumstantial, James finished. So we get the evidence ourselves. James, that's illegal. Yeah, but so is poisoning a child and murdering witnesses. At this point, I'm okay with bending rules if it keeps everyone alive. Victoria was nodding. William keeps backups of everything. He's paranoid about losing data. There's a safe in his home office in London, the flat he bought after the divorce. If we can get to it. James looked at her. You're not going to London. The hell I'm not. I know the security codes, the building layout where he keeps his passwords. You need me. What I need is for you to stay here where it's safe and let me handle this. Safe? Victoria laughed bitterly. James, you just heard Sandra. They're killing witnesses. How long before they figure out where we are? Days, hours. The best defense is ending this, getting evidence that destroys them so completely they can't touch us. She's right, Sandra said reluctantly. Much as I hated offensive action beats sitting and waiting to be found. But you'd need to move fast. William will realize eventually that you're going after his files. How fast can you get us to London? James asked. Private jet can have you there in 7 hours, but James, if this goes wrong. It won't. He said it with more confidence than he felt. What about the kids? They stay here with my team. Davis and Martinez are former special forces. They can hold this position if things get hot. James looked at Marcus sleeping peacefully in the next room. Every instinct screamed not to leave him. But Sandra was right. The best way to protect his son was to end the threat. Permanently. Okay, he said. We go to London. We get the evidence. We end this. After hanging up, Victoria stood and started for her room. I need to pack, and James, thank you for trusting me to do this with you. Victoria, wait. She turned. In London, if things go wrong, if we get cornered or compromised, I need you to promise me something. What? You run. You get out. Get back here to Sophia. Don't try to be a hero. The same applies to you. Marcus needs his father. Marcus has always known his father might not come home. It's why I never went back to being an EMT. Too much risk. James's throat was tight. But if it comes down to it, if it's me or you, I'm trained for this and you're not. So you run. Promise me. Victoria moved closer, and in the dim light of the cabin she looked younger somehow. Vulnerable in a way he'd never seen from the powerful CEO who commanded boardrooms. I promise. If you promise the same. Deal. They stood close enough that James could feel the warmth of her smell. Her perfume mixed with exhaustion and fear. For a moment, he thought about closing that last bit of distance about what it might mean. But this wasn't the time. There might never be a time. Get some rest, he said instead. We leave in 3 hours. The goodbyes were harder than James anticipated. Marcus clung to him suddenly, convinced that his father wouldn't return. You promised, the boy said, tears streaming. You promised you'd come back. And I will, always. But buddy, I need you to be brave while I'm gone. Can you do that? Marcus nodded against his chest. I'll protect Sophia, like you're protecting us. The simple faith in those words broke something in James. He pulled his son tight and whispered, I love you more than anything in this whole world. Remember that. Always remember that. Victoria's goodbye to Sophia was equally wrenching. The girl didn't cry, but held her mother's hand with desperate strength. Mom, what if you don't come back? Then Mr. Carter will come back, and he'll make sure you're safe and loved and you grow up strong and brave. But Sophia... Victoria's voice cracked. I'm coming back. I'm going to end this, so we can go home and be normal again. I promise. Davis pulled James aside as they prepared to leave. You know this is probably a trap, right? William posts. Bale disappears suddenly. There's evidence in London that needs retrieving. Could be he's trying to draw you out. I know. That's why we're going anyway. If it's a trap, we spring it and end this. If it's real, we get what we need. And if you don't come back... James looked at Marcus one more time. Then you get him and Sophia somewhere safe. Somewhere they can grow up without this hanging over them. That's all I ask. You've got my word. The private jet was small but functional. James had never flown in anything like it. Leather seats, actual legroom, a flight attendant who offered real food instead of peanuts. Victoria sat across from him, staring out the window as Boston fell away below them. Weird, isn't it? She said after they reached cruising altitude. A week ago I didn't know you existed. Now we're flying to London to burgle my ex-husband's apartment. Not the strangest week I've had, but it's up there. What was stranger? Fallujah 2011. Got separated from my unit during a firefight, ended up hiding in an abandoned house with 2 civilians and an insurgent who was also hiding. We spent 8 hours in that house, none of us speaking the same language, all of us knowing one wrong move meant death. When the shooting finally stopped, we all just walked away in different directions. Did you ever find out what happened to them? No. And I think about them sometimes. Wonder if they made it home. If they think about the crazy American medic they spent 8 hours not killing. James shrugged. War's weird like that. Moments of humanity in the middle of insanity. Is that what this is, war? Close enough. Different weapons, same principle. People trying to take what isn't theirs, willing to kill to get it. Victoria was quiet for a long time. Then, James. What happens after? If we survive this, get the evidence, put everyone in prison, what happens to us? What do you mean? I mean you and me. This partnership we've built. Does it end when the crisis does? James had been carefully not thinking about that question. About what it meant that he'd started looking forward to Victoria's presence, to her sharp mind and sharper tongue, to the way she challenged him to be more than he thought he could be. I don't know, he admitted. We're from different worlds. Once this is over, once you go back to running your empire, and I go back to whatever I go back to, those worlds don't really intersect. What if I don't want to go back to that world? What if I want something different? Victoria. I'm serious. This past week has shown me what I've been missing. Real connection, real partnership. Someone who sees me as more than a title or a bank account. She leaned forward. I don't know what this is between us. Maybe it's just trauma bonding. Maybe it's something more. But I'd like the chance to find out, after this is over, if you want that too. James's chest felt tight. I want that. But I'm a janitor with PTSD and a kid and a mountain of baggage. What could I possibly offer someone like you? Someone like me. James, I'm a woman who poisoned her own daughter because she was too focused on work to notice she was being poisoned. I'm a woman who married a sociopath and didn't see it for 15 years. I'm a mess. Maybe we're both messes. But maybe that's okay. Maybe messes can figure things out together. Before James could respond, the pilot's voice came over the intercom. We're experiencing some turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. The plane shuddered, dropping suddenly. Victoria gasped, gripping her armrests. Then it steadied, and the pilot's voice returned. False alarm, folks. Just some rough air. Should be smooth from here. But James's mind had gone elsewhere. Turbulence. False alarms. The universe's way of reminding him that nothing was guaranteed, that every moment could be the last one. Victoria, he said. When we get back, when this is over, I'd like to take you to dinner. A real one. Not crisis planning or hiding from killers. Just dinner. She smiled, and it transformed her face. I'd like that. Good. Then let's survive London and make it happen. The plane flew on through the night, carrying them toward confrontation and danger, and maybe, just maybe, something worth fighting for beyond mere survival. James closed his eyes and thought of Marcus, of Sophia, of 2 children who deserved a world where adults didn't poison each other for profit. He thought of Victoria, fierce and broken, and putting herself back together one decision at a time. He thought of Angela, gone 3 years, but still teaching him lessons about love and loss and finding reasons to keep going. And he thought about the man waiting in London, William Marshall, architect, of months of suffering, willing to murder his own daughter for corporate control. That man had started a war he didn't understand. Had targeted people who'd learned to fight in places where the cost of losing was measured in lives, not money. William Marshall was about to learn a hard truth that James had learned in Fallujah and carried home in his bones. Sometimes the janitor isn't just a janitor. Sometimes he's the most dangerous person in the room. And he's done cleaning up other people's messes. London greeted them with rain and gray dawn light that barely penetrated the clouds. James had slept maybe 2 hours on the plane, his body refusing to fully shut down, despite exhaustion. Victoria looked similarly wrung out, but her eyes held sharp focus as they cleared customs and collected the rental car Sandra had arranged. "The flat's in Kensington," Victoria said, pulling up directions on her phone. "Top floor of a converted Victorian. William bought it cash after the divorce, probably with money he'd already been skimming from the company." Security. Standard building system. Doorman who leaves at 6 p.m. Individual flat alarms that I know the codes to because William's too arrogant to think I'd ever use them. James drove through unfamiliar streets, his training cataloging exits and approaches out of habit. The building was exactly as Victoria described: elegant, expensive, quietly screaming old money. They parked 2 blocks away and waited watching. "There," Victoria pointed. The doorman was leaving right on schedule. 6:03 p.m. "We've got until morning before the next shift. And if William's inside, then we adapt." Victoria's jaw was set. "But James, if he is there, if this turns violent—" "I know. Last resort only." He checked the weapon Sandra had provided, making sure Victoria didn't see his hands shake slightly. Combat was one thing. Breaking into apartments was another. "You ready?" "No, but let's go anyway." They walked to the building like they belonged there. Victoria punched in the entry code and the door clicked open. The lobby was empty, all marble and mirrors, and the kind of silence that money bought. The elevator carried them up 6 floors, and with each floor, James felt the weight of what they were doing settle heavier. Breaking and entering. Burglary. If they were caught, no amount of explaining about poisoned children and corporate conspiracies would matter. They'd be criminals, pure and simple. The hallway was empty. Victoria led them to flat 6C and produced a key from her purse. "You kept his key." "He doesn't know I have it. I made a copy before I returned the original during the divorce." She slid it into the lock. It turned smoothly. "William always underestimated me. That's going to be his downfall." The flat was dark and cold, clearly unoccupied. Victoria moved through it with the confidence of someone who'd been here before, going straight to the home office. James followed his senses, screaming that something was wrong. Too easy. This was all too easy. The safe's behind this painting. Victoria swung aside an abstract piece that probably cost more than James's car. Behind it, a wall safe with an electronic keypad. "I know the combination. He uses the same one for everything our anniversary backward." She punched in numbers. The safe beeped and opened. Inside were file folders, USB drives, and a laptop. Victoria grabbed everything, stuffing it into the bag James carried. Her hands moved fast, efficient, but James noticed they were shaking. "Got it. Let's go." They'd almost reached the door when James heard it. The elevator. Coming up. "Someone's coming." Victoria froze. "William?" "Don't know. Bathroom. Now." They ducked into the bathroom just as the front door opened. James eased the bathroom door almost closed, leaving just enough gap to see through. His hand moved to his weapon. 2 figures entered. One was William Marshall, looking haggard but determined. The other was a woman James didn't recognize, blonde, professional, cold eyes. The driver from Boston. "You're certain they'll come here?" the woman asked. British accent, clipped and precise. "Where else would they go? Victoria knows I keep everything on these systems. She thinks she's clever coming to London while I'm supposedly in the wind." William moved to pour himself a scotch. "Patricia, how long until your people arrive?" 20 minutes. They'll handle Carter. The woman too, if necessary." "Not necessary. I want Victoria alive. She needs to sign the papers transferring her shares before we kill her." "Yes, you've mentioned." Patricia's voice held contempt. "Honestly, William, this entire operation has been a disaster. Months of planning, thousands in bribes and contractors, and you still couldn't manage to kill one woman and her brat." "Sophia's condition was unpredictable," Blackwood assured me. "Blackwood's dead, suicide officially. Personally, I made sure of it. One less loose end. Patricia checked her watch. The question now is cleaning up this mess. Carter's more capable than anticipated. Former military combat experience. He won't go quietly. Then make sure your people don't give him a choice. In the bathroom, James's blood ran ice cold. They'd walked into exactly the trap Davis had warned about. And in 20 minutes, professional killers would arrive to finish what the poisoning had started. Victoria's face had gone white. James leaned close and whispered directly into her ear. "Fire escape." She nodded, pointing toward the bedroom. James eased the bathroom door shut and locked it, buying seconds. Then they moved to the bedroom window, quick and quiet. The fire escape was rusted, but functional. "Go," James whispered. "I'm right behind you." Victoria climbed out, moving faster than he'd expected. James followed just as shouting erupted from inside the flat. "They're gone. The safe's empty. Find them." Patricia's voice sharp as knives. "They can't have gotten far." James and Victoria descended the fire escape, feet clanging on metal. Above them, William's face appeared at the window, rage twisting his features. "You can't run, Victoria. I'll find you. I'll find both of you, and I'll make you watch each other die." They hit the alley and ran. James grabbed Victoria's hand, pulling her through narrow passages between buildings. Behind them, footsteps and voices. Ahead, the maze of London streets that James didn't know. "This way." Victoria pulled him left, then right. She knew the area better than he'd expected. They burst onto a busier street, immediately slowing to a walk, trying to blend with the evening crowd. "Keep moving. Don't look back." James's training kicked in, scanning for threats. "Where's the nearest tube station?" 2 blocks. But James, they'll expect that. Which is why we're not taking it. We need a place to hide somewhere we can examine what we took from the safe. Victoria thought fast. "There's a hotel, the Milestone. I used to stay there during business trips before William and I married. Staff might remember me." It was a risk, but everything was a risk now. They walked quickly but not frantically. 2 more tourists in a city full of them. James kept his hand near his weapon, ready for the attack he knew was coming. The Milestone was exactly the kind of establishment Victoria would use: discreet, expensive, the kind of place where staff were paid to not ask questions. The woman at the desk did indeed remember Mrs. Marshall. "Of course, Mrs. Marshall. Lovely to see you again. Will you be needing a suite?" "Just a room, 1 night, and I'd prefer complete privacy." "Naturally." The woman didn't even blink at Victoria's lack of luggage or disheveled appearance. "Room 412 is available. Very quiet, excellent views." Once inside the room, James finally let himself breathe. They'd made it. For now. Victoria dumped the contents of the bag onto the bed. Files drives the laptop. "We need to go through all of this. Find something concrete." "You do that. I'm calling Sandra." James pulled out his phone. No signal. He tried again. Nothing. "That's not good." "What's wrong?" "My phone's dead. Not battery, completely dead. Like it's been remotely disabled." He checked Victoria's. Same thing. "They're jamming us. Or they've hacked our devices. Either way, we're cut off." Victoria's face showed the first real fear James had seen since Boston. "They can track these phones. If they're hacked, they already know we're here, or they will soon." James moved to the window, checking angles and exits. "We've got maybe an hour before they narrow down our location. Less if they're good." "Then I work fast." Victoria opened the laptop, her fingers flying over keys. "This is William's personal machine. If there's evidence of the conspiracy, it's here." While she worked, James did what he'd been trained to do: prepare for battle. He checked the room's layout, identified cover positions, calculated angles of fire. The door was the obvious entry point, but there was a connecting door to the next room and a window that opened onto a narrow ledge. "James," Victoria's voice was tight. "I found something. Emails between William and Patricia Vance going back 18 months. They're detailed. Everything the plan to poison me through the coffee, using Sophia's illness to make me vulnerable, bribing board members, falsifying financial records to justify forcing me out. Is it enough? It's everything. Bank transactions, names, dates. This is conspiracy to commit murder, corporate fraud, racketeering. With these files, the FBI can arrest everyone involved. Then we copy everything to multiple drives and get it to Sandra. With what phones? Victoria's frustration boiled over. We're stuck in this hotel with evidence that could destroy them and no way to communicate with anyone. James was about to respond when he heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Too many of them, moving too purposefully. They're here. He grabbed Victoria, pulling her into the bathroom. Stay down. No matter what happens, you stay down and you protect those files. That's the mission now. James. Promise me. I promise. The hotel room door exploded inward. 3 men entered, weapons drawn, moving with professional precision. James recognized the type: private military contractors, former special forces, the kind of mercenaries who worked for people like Patricia Vance. He fired from the bathroom doorway 2 quick shots that dropped the first man. The other 2 scattered, returning fire. Bullets punched through walls, shattered the mirror, tore apart the expensive furniture. James moved, combat instincts taking over completely. He wasn't thinking anymore, just reacting. Slide left, fire. Drop behind the bed, fire again. The second contractor went down. The third was better, finding cover and laying down, suppressing fire. Carter. Patricia Vance's voice from the hallway. You're outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender the laptop and Victoria Marshall, and you walk away alive. Not happening, James shouted back, reloading. Then you die here. Your choice. The third contractor tried to flank, coming through the connecting door. James was ready, catching him with 2 shots center mass. The man went down hard. Silence fell, broken only by James's harsh breathing and the sound of sirens in the distance. Someone had called the police. Good. You just killed 3 of my best people. Patricia's voice held rage now, not calculation. I'm going to enjoy watching William torture you before you die. Come in and try it yourself, James called back. But he was calculating. 3 rounds left in his magazine, 1 spare mag. Against however many more contractors Patricia had in the hallway, those odds weren't good. Victoria appeared beside him, and his heart stopped. I told you to stay down. I'm not hiding while you die for me. She held up a USB drive. I copied everything to this. If we don't make it, at least someone will find it eventually. We're making it. James said it with certainty he didn't feel. When the police arrive, Patricia will have to pull back. We just need to hold until then. James, there's something I need to say. In case... Don't. His voice was rough. Don't do the goodbye speech. We're both walking out of here. I love you. She said it simply, directly. I know it's insane. We've known each other a week, but I love you. And I needed you to know before... James kissed her. Quick and fierce and desperate. I love you too. Now get back in that bathroom and let me do my job. More footsteps. More contractors entering the room. James fired, conserving ammunition, making every shot count. But they kept coming, and his magazine was almost empty. This was it. The moment when training wasn't enough, when determination couldn't overcome numbers. James thought of Marcus, of the promise he'd made to come home. Thought of Sophia recovering in Vermont, waiting for her mother. He thought of Angela, gone 3 years, and wondered if he'd see her soon. Then the window exploded inward and men in tactical gear poured through, but these ones had "police" stenciled on their vests in fluorescent letters. Someone had called in more than just local bobbies. This was Metropolitan Police Service Armed Response Unit, the kind that didn't mess around. Drop your weapons. Everyone on the ground now. The contractors froze, caught between James and the police. Patricia Vance tried to run, but officers grabbed her in the hallway. Within seconds it was over. James lowered his weapon slowly, hands visible, letting the police secure him. They zip-tied his wrists, but their leader, a sergeant with gray hair and steady eyes, looked at the dead contractors, and then at James. "You, James Carter?" "Yeah. Got a call from someone named Sandra Torres, FBI liaison. Said you'd be here, said you'd need extraction." The sergeant looked at Victoria, who was emerging from the bathroom, hands up. "You must be Mrs. Marshall." "I am. And I have evidence of—" "Save it for the station, ma'am. Right now we're getting you both somewhere safe." He nodded to his team. "Move them. Separate vehicles, lights and sirens. Let's not give anyone else a chance to take shots at our witnesses." At the station, Sandra's face appeared on video call, her relief visible even through the pixelated connection. "You two are alive. Thank God. When your phones went dark and we lost contact." "We're alive," James confirmed. "And we got the evidence. Everything. Financial records, emails, confessions. It's all here. Upload it to our secure server, now, before anyone else tries to destroy it." While Victoria worked on the upload, James asked, "What about the kids? Are Marcus and Sophia?" "Safe. Davis called in 30 minutes ago. No attempts on the cabin. They're secured and protected." The relief was overwhelming. James had to sit down, his legs suddenly unable to support him. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, they'd actually done it. "William Marshall and Patricia Vance are in custody," the sergeant reported, "along with 4 contractors who survived the hotel incident. They're all lawyering up, but with the evidence Mrs. Marshall provided, it won't matter." "Dr. Blackwood?" Victoria asked. "Confirmed suicide," Sandra said. "But we found his personal files. He kept records of everything, insurance, he called it. More evidence of the conspiracy. Victoria, we've identified 12 people involved in this, including 4 of your board members. They're all being arrested as we speak." Victoria's hand found James's. He squeezed back, neither of them speaking. There were no words for what they were feeling. Relief, exhaustion, grief for what had been lost, hope for what might be saved. "There's a plane waiting to take you home," Sandra continued. "But the Met wants statements first. Could be a few hours." "We'll give them whatever they need," James said. The sun was rising over London by the time they finished at the station. James and Victoria walked out into morning light, free for the first time in what felt like years, but had only been 8 days. 8 days that had changed everything. "We should get to the airport," Victoria said, but she didn't move. Neither did James. "I meant what I said," he told her. "In the hotel. I love you." "I meant it too. But James, I need you to understand something. This week, this nightmare, it's not normal life. When we go back to Boston, when things settle down, we might find that what we feel now doesn't translate. That we were just 2 people in crisis who—" "Stop." James turned to face her fully. "I know the difference between trauma bonding and real connection. What we have isn't about the crisis. It's about who you are, stubborn and brilliant and brave enough to face your worst fears. It's about how you make me want to be better than I am. How you see me as more than just a janitor with a broken past. You were never just a janitor. I was hiding. You made me stop hiding. You made me remember who I could be when I stopped being afraid." He took her hands. "So when we get home, when life gets normal and boring, I want to see where this goes. If you do." Victoria's eyes filled with tears, the good kind finally. "I want to see where this goes." "Then that's what we'll do, together." The flight home felt different from the flight out, lighter somehow despite the exhaustion. They slept for most of it, Victoria's head on James's shoulder, his arm around her. When they landed in Vermont, Sandra was waiting with Davis and the children. Marcus saw James and ran, hitting him at full speed. "Dad, you came back. You promised, and you came back." James held his son tight, breathing in the smell of his shampoo and kid sweat and pure relief. "Always, buddy. Always." Sophia was awake and sitting up, color in her cheeks, for the first time since James had met her. "Mom, I'm here, baby." Victoria knelt beside her daughter's wheelchair. "It's over. It's finally over. Can we go home? Soon. Very soon." That evening in the cabin with everyone safe, James watched Marcus and Sophia playing a board game. The two children who'd been strangers a week ago now moved with the easy comfort of siblings. Sophia was teaching Marcus chess. Marcus was making her laugh with terrible jokes. "They're good together," Victoria said, coming to stand beside him. "Yeah, they are." "James, about that dinner you mentioned. The real one, not crisis planning." "Still interested?" "Very. But I was thinking, what if instead of dinner we did something more casual? You, me, the kids. Maybe pizza and a movie. Let them get used to the idea of us as whatever we're becoming." "I like that idea." "Good. Because I hope we might be becoming a family. Not immediately, not rushing, but eventually." She looked at him. "Is that crazy?" "Probably. But after this week, crazy seems pretty normal." Marcus looked up from the game. "Dad, can Sophia come stay with us sometime when she's all better? I think that could be arranged." "Cool." Marcus went back to the game, accepting this new reality with the flexibility of childhood. Sophia met James's eyes over the board. "Thank you for saving my mom, and for helping save me." "You're welcome, kiddo." "Are you going to marry her?" The question came from nowhere, direct and innocent. Victoria choked on her coffee. James felt his face heat. "Sophia," Victoria managed, "what I'm just asking. Marcus's dad saved your life like 6 times. In movies that means they get married." "Real life isn't like movies," James said carefully. "But your mom and I, we care about each other, and we're going to see where that leads. Is that okay with you?" Sophia considered this seriously. "Will Marcus be my brother?" "Maybe. Eventually, if things work out." "Okay then. I always wanted a brother." She moved her chess piece. "Checkmate, Marcus." "What, no fair? You distracted me with the marriage question." "All's fair in chess and marriage," Sophia said solemnly, and the adults couldn't help but laugh. Later, after the kids were asleep, James and Victoria sat on the cabin's porch watching stars emerge. Sandra and her team had left the immediate danger past. Tomorrow, they'd return to Boston to police statements and legal proceedings and rebuilding their lives. But tonight, they had this moment of peace. "I never thanked you properly," Victoria said, "for everything. You didn't have to get involved. You could have walked away after that first night." "No, I couldn't. Not once I knew what was happening." "Why? Because you're a good person. Because I saw myself in you. Someone fighting to protect what matters most, feeling helpless despite doing everything right. I couldn't save Angela, but I could help save you and Sophia. Maybe that makes me selfish, trying to rewrite my past through your present. Or maybe it makes you human. We're all trying to rewrite our pasts, James. Make better choices. Be better people. You helped me do that. You helped me too. Helped me remember I'm more than my trauma. More than a man cleaning floors to avoid his memories." "What are you then?" James thought about it. "A father. A protector. Someone who stands up when people need him. A work in progress." He looked at her. "Someone who's maybe ready to try loving again." "Just try?" "Well, we've only known each other 8 days. Seems premature to make grand declarations." Victoria smiled. "You told me you loved me while people were shooting at us." "Combat situations don't count. Everyone gets emotional when they think they're dying." "So you didn't mean it?" "I meant every word. But I'd like to mean it again tomorrow, and the day after, and every day until it stops being scary and starts being normal. I can work with that timeline." They sat in comfortable silence, shoulders touching, breathing in sync. Two people who'd been shattered by their pasts, finding unexpected wholeness in each other. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would be challenges ahead: legal proceedings, therapy for the kids, navigating the complexity of blending their very different lives. But they'd faced corporate conspiracies and poisoners and hired killers. They could handle the mundane difficulties of building something real. Above them, stars wheeled across the Vermont sky, ancient and constant. Inside, two children slept peacefully, no longer haunted by threats they didn't understand. And on the porch, two adults who'd stopped hiding from their pain began planning a future together. James Carter had spent 3 years believing his story ended with Angela's death, that he'd used up his chance at love and family and normal life. Victoria Marshall had spent years believing power and control were all that mattered, that vulnerability was weakness and trust was liability. They'd both been wrong. Sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another. Sometimes the person who saves your life is the one you end up saving in return. And sometimes, just sometimes, love finds you in the least expected places. In a hospital hallway at 2 a.m. In a janitor's mop bucket. In the space between crisis and calm, where two broken people chose to be whole together. That was their story. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And real was all they needed.